So I have seen that this video wasn't particularly well liked, let's say, and I thought that this was likely to be the case, so I decided to just try to re-edit it and re-release it to see if it can function a little bit better. So I apologize if it comes off as arrogant or anything like that. Solipsism, put in simple terms, the belief that you are the only person that exists. Let's say self-centeredness without necessarily being selfish. The belief that other people are simply an image that you have built with your mind. The belief that they do not exist quite at the same level as you do. With the consequence to this particular attitude towards life being a tendency to isolate yourself, to avoid engaging in complex interactions with others, as it's just not worth it, as they do not really exist. The pain that comes from them, from those relationships, is too much to handle, considering that, well, they are just an illusion, they are just fake. This could be considered an appropriate way of describing the character of Shinji and his outlook towards life. Okay, maybe it is a little bit much, but he is heading there. Right, I understand that this may need some explaining. It is difficult to think of Shinji as self-centered and egotistical, considering his particular behavior throughout the series. But it is also important to understand why he is. Let's take Shinji's attitude towards his problems. Anything that causes him pain, be it a person and as such a relationship, or something else entirely, having to pilot the Eva or anything along those lines. What is his general reaction when confronted with pain and issues? He runs away. He shuts himself off from the world, closes himself in his room, and cuts ties with everything. The implication here being, of course, that if he doesn't look at his problems, if he doesn't look at others, then they all just disappear. They cease to exist. They aren't there anymore. He is the only one left, and he is alone, without being exposed to all the pain that comes from expectations, rejections, and so forth and so on. But the idea that you could just make people disappear by not looking at them, isn't that extremely close to that solipsistic belief that you are the only person to truly exist? Now, of course, he never consciously believes to be the only real person in the world, but he has shown certain behaviors, certain tendencies that, if brought to their extreme, could easily result in that very self-centered and solipsistic belief. The distance that separates the belief that you can just make people, problems and relationships disappear just by isolating yourself from the belief that you are the only person to truly exist in this world is much shorter than one may think. In Evangelion, the author, Hideaki Anno, makes a point to criticize Shinji's solipsistic tendencies. We follow him throughout a journey where he learns to interact with others, to open up a little bit, to start engaging in those interactions, and then he stops. Any kind of positive development he may have achieved in the first episodes is completely reverted by the time that we reach End of Evangelion, culminating in the scene in which, after isolating himself from Rei and Misato, he unexplainably looks for Asuka's attention, and when he doesn't receive it, he does what he does, and eventually gives up on life in its entirety. He is saved by Misato, but he fails to save Asuka. Well, I am not suggesting that the issue or the mistake in End of Evangelion is that Shinji ultimately is unable to properly grow. I'm not suggesting that a negative development does not count as development. It is an interesting, if unusual, journey to witness. The issue comes into play in the second part of End of Evangelion. As I was saying before, Anno made Evangelion in part with the purpose of criticizing a solipsistic outlook towards life, as it carries some significantly negative consequences, depression being a likely consequence of this, as of course isolation does lead to depression. But if Anno's purpose was in fact that of criticizing a solipsistic mentality, then he made what I believe to be, and of course it is just my personal opinion, a pretty major mistake in the second part of End of Evangelion. What happens in it? Well, we know. Shinji finds himself in the position where he gets to choose about the fate of every single human being in existence. Rei Lilith gives him a choice, which could be summarized as a choice between allowing everybody to choose whether to exist or not, and the choice to just say screw it to everything, die, and bring everybody with him, thus denying everybody else the choice. But we had just pointed out how one of the inherent issues to a solipsistic mentality is the idea that nobody else truly exists, that they are images that you have constructed with your mind, that you are the only one to exist at the center of everything. Now the question is, how could solipsism be criticized effectively? Through giving a person who has shown solipsistic tendencies a choice concerning the fate and the lives of every single human being that exists. If we had established that one of the main issues of solipsism comes in the form of the belief of being in a way existentially superior to others, then by giving, in this case, Shinji, who is, especially towards the end of the story, dangerously close to sharing that belief, such a choice, you are simply confirming that very belief. In the second half of End of Evangelion, Asuka is used by Anno to expose the self-centeredness that is at the heart of Shinji's passive and docile disposition. He is criticized for this, and yet, only a few minutes after the sequence, he is then given a choice that further confirms that he is in fact the person who matters most. And in that sense, I guess he was right in being self-centered. I don't know, maybe it's just my thing, maybe I am interpreting things the wrong way, but it seems to me like there is a mixed message hidden in End of Evangelion, and I do not know what to make of it. But I do know that Anno's intentions were positive. He was trying to send a message that pushed against egotism and solipsism. A message about the importance of opening up to others, of engaging in human relationships, even if it means that you'll have to suffer, because the pain, as is said in End of Evangelion, is what makes you human. And from this perspective, Shinji and Asuka are the same. Everybody is the same. That Shinji's pain and struggles aren't different than those of anybody else. So you understand why there is a problem when he's at the same time confirming that Shinji's mentality is correct when he gives him the possibility of choosing for everybody else. Why is he denying every single other human being the initial choice, if indeed every other human being exists in the same way as Shinji? So, what do I hope from this final movie? Well, I'm hoping that it will not boil down to a simple choice given to Shinji. My preference would be to see Shinji actively working towards supporting somebody else in their effort of saving the world. But if Anno wants to go all the way with the idea of Shinji as the savior, at least for his role to feel deserved, not with simple words, but with actions in the movie.